Okay, so hopefully you have a picture of an animal or some kind of um, view view of your yard or something along those lines. You've got some time, Joe, if you want to try to find a photograph or okay. Well, today we are going to do animals. If you just want to watch as I work, and then you can do your own sketch later when you have a source. Yeah, you can do that too. If you go to like Creative Commons, Flickr, you can get like photographs that are royalty free, so that if you sketch something based on someone's photo, you could still sell it and not have some kind of copyright issue. All right. Well, it looks like it's just us here right now. So hopefully our other students will join soon. I'll wait and take roll in just a minute. Um, so I'll let you. Let's just wait. Okay. There's Lindsay. Hey, Lindsay. So we'll wait just a little bit longer for some other folks to join in, and then we'll get started. So, Lindsay, make sure that you have some kind of reference image, or you have a window you're looking out of, so you can observe animal life. Today we're doing animals or a pet nearby, so you can work from life or work from a photograph or a specimen, like a feather, if you have things like that. Uh, you know, found materials. Um, even I'm going to show some things I have. Maybe you have a dried butterfly you could work from. So make sure you have a reference. That's okay. You don't have to have that. It's but that's another option. Mhm. Okay. Well, let's get started, and people can join in as they arrive. So it's July 2nd. Joe is here, and Lindsay is here. Okay. So uh, drawing animals is something that I really, really enjoy doing. And when you're working with animal life, the biggest challenge from is movement. That they're unpredictable, and that they're going to scurry, they're going to scamp, they're going to fly away, um, swim away. Uh, so, there's some things you can do to help um, mediate those challenges, and that includes binoculars, especially with birds, because birds typically don't like you to get too close to them. So observing birds, especially like at the beach, it's a good idea to have a set of binoculars with you. The other aspect of observing animal life is just being quiet. Um, Animals don't expect humans to be quiet. We're a very loud species, um, and we make a lot of noise usually in nature. So if you're very quiet and you sit for a long period of time, which is often required to do a very detailed drawing, then nature can reveal itself in unexpected ways, and that's something that's really wonderful about sketching outside. So I'm going to talk today about different approaches to depicting animal textures. Textures is really important, as well as movement, and looking at animals and accurately depicting them. So I'm going to show you some examples now of my work, and as you can see, I dressed for today. So I've got my last week was Cephalopod week. I don't know if you listened to Science Friday, but I love Ira Plato and Science Friday, so I wore my Cephalopod shirt today for you all. So I'm going to lower my camera and we'll look at some examples of work that I've done. And I should also say that drawing animals doesn't have to be wildlife. It can be your pets, other people's pets. If you take if you have a dog or a cat or another pet and you take them to the vet, that's a really good time to sketch, is when you're in the vet's office, because there's lots of different animals and they're moving around, and that's a good challenge. Okay, so first let's just look at some very basic sketches that you could do. And let me pin myself and move some of this so you don't see cords. These are images I did outside. And morning, Randy. So very, very basic, just trying to catch us using very quick gestural line, and you're not going to be able to do contour line when you just have a few seconds to sketch, because the animal's going to move. So just trying to get, I just with very simple line, I got a feeling for the little bird kind of straining to reach over the edge of this, the roof, with these birds, and it's not even species specific at this point. It's just these are birds. They're on a line, and one may be grooming. This one is facing one direction. This one is facing the other direction, and trying to get a feeling for the shape of the body. With birds, the shape of the body and the shape of the head are really important for distinguishing between species, if that's important to you. But first, this was a little pencil sketch that I did. And you can see I got a feeling for the bird is cleaning its feathers. It's preening. Whereas this one is maybe taking a little nap. Its head is tucked under. Now, this is actually from a ceramic squirrel. That's not a real squirrel. And I got more details on that. I have lots of anal lizards in my yard, and you can see this one. And I got the telltale throat pouch underneath. So anal lizards are really great for studying in San Antonio. They typically will they can be very still for long periods of time. So they're a good animal. And this is just a like lots of different approaches on just one page. Okay. This was a pen and ink of a cicada, and cicadas have been in the news a lot lately. I don't know those of you that are not in San Antonio right now. If you're up north, maybe you're seeing all the cicadas that are once in a generation coming out of from underground. But cicadas leave shells, so this was a better sketch that I did in pencil. And why is that better than that one? A lot of it just had to do with my view of the object. So that's another thing, is to think about doing more than one view. And then if you have time, and with something like a seashell that's not moving, I had time to add color with that's graphite with just a little bit of color pencil. And so today I'll do that. I'll add just a little bit of color into my sketch. But you don't have to use color. And another thing is, when you're going to add, like if you start the sketch before the animal moves, just take out your phone and take a photo of it. That way you have that as documentation to work from later. The zoo is a good place for studying animals. These are zoo sketches from the Houston Zoo. So I love koala bears. As a little child, I had a toy called Salty the koala bear. So I've always loved koala bears. And you can see last week we studied how to use light and shadow. So what's that technique? Do you remember that technique with pen and ink? What's that called? Very good, Lindsay. Little bit of cross-hatching, but mainly hatching. And notice how I curved the lines to the koala's body to give it a sense for volume. And also it adds texture and gives you a feeling for this is fur. So hatching, cross-hatching, even a little stippling are good for getting a sense for fur. And that's a little watercolor. Your Tombow marker those Tombow markers can be useful here, where you do a little pencil sketch, take your Tombow marker, add a little water to it, and it'll become a wash. You could also do that with watercolor pencils, and then let it dry, and then you can put your pen lines with a waterproof pen, like a Pitt pen, on top. And it helps to work with multiple sketches at the same time, so that you can get, when you're dealing with drawing time. Okay, here's some parrots that I saw, so I didn't add color there. This is more like scribble gesture, what I did on that parrot. So it gives a feeling for feathers, and you'll see with like snakes or reptiles and birds. Birds are adapted scales. That's really feathers. Well, not birds. Birds are dinosaurs, but feathers are scales that have evolved to have a different form. But they still layer in a similar way to scales on a lizard or on a snake or on a fish, for that matter. Now, this lizard I did, this was Enchanted Rock, and I did this study just in black and white, and this lizard was nestled in a crevice in Enchanted Rock. And, so I did stippling, so you'll see stippling, little dots, and then a darker use of ink, okay? So that was India ink that I did that with, okay? Now, looking at a pet, and my video shows me sketching Nina. So she's a border collie, and this is just trying to get a sense for her head using a very loose hatching, cross-hatching. And notice how I've done many sketches on one page, that can be a good way to study. This was just, I used the Tombow marker exactly how I just said. I drew with the black Tombow marker, and then I added water and turned it into a wash, and also did that shadow that way. Now the Tombow marker makes a cool black, whereas India ink is a warm black. If I hold this up here, this is India ink, and it's a different the temperature of color, of hue. Okay. I did a very loose gestural sketch of the dog, and then I and if you use a waterproof pen like a Pitt pen or a Pigma pen to do the sketch, then let it dry just a little bit. I mean, just for a minute maybe. Um, then I went, well, you don't have to, I mean, before you add water. I mean, even a waterproof pen, while it's wet, can smear. But then I just went in using, I would use this end of the brush, the calligraphic end, the brush tip of the Tombow, and then just go over it, moving side to side, and then add water, and it'll dissolve. I mean, I'll try to demonstrate that this morning. But it's the Tombows are good for travel because they are water soluble. Okay, so there you can see I did some hatching, very loose kind of scribble gesture, and she's moving around. The thing is with an animal like a dog, a cat, and cats are really good because they have to sleep so much. They sleep more than the majority of animals. So they're often resting. They're in repose. But there's a limited range of movement that the animal will take, and this applies for people too. We all tend to stand a certain way, and then you'll shift your weight when you're tired of standing that way, and then you'll stand another way. But if you just are still and wait a minute, the animal will go back to that pose that you were sketching in. Okay, so it helps to do a variety of poses at once. Okay. Butterflies are really nice, and if you're in San Antonio, there's so many butterflies fluttering around right now. In fact, I'm going to focus on not a butterfly, but its larval form in a bit. Here's two different versions of butterfly. One is done with the Pitt pen and color pencil. This one is done with the Tombow marker and some other markers. So you can add color via color pencil. You can add color via marker. So very different look to that. Okay, let's look at just a few others sketches that I've done. Okay, so this my mother had a fighting samurai fish called Roo at one point, and I did this color pencil study. So you can see how I rendered the scales. They were kind of diamond shaped, but I used the colored pencil to try to capture just the elegance of the line quality in the fins of this fish. So if you have an aquarium, that's a good place to observe animals. Here, I want to show you a couple of crab drawings that I made. I guess I'd bring more than that. Okay, I guess thought I brought more than that. Maybe I just brought one. Nope, here we go. Okay. So this is more using contour line to study a ghost crab, okay? So that's more of a sustained drawing, and it's been a while since I remember doing this. Ghost crabs don't tend to stay still, so I gather that was from a photograph. And here was another sketch using contour line. Now this is using graphite, so here I'm adding value, I'm adding shading with continuous tone. And then this one, I added just a little bit of color. So there you can see all different ways to approach this. And then when I teach the illustration class, I talk about how to do caricatures and more cartoon-like interpretations of animals. Now here's a little study of some plovers on the beach, and I incorporated a little bit of watercolor and some color marker. Okay, and it helped having binoculars to do that. Moths and butterflies sometimes will be very still, so insects are good to study, and the softness of the color pencil lend itself to giving a feeling for the softness of the animal. That's a very good question, Joe. I go back and forth. I look through the binocular, look down at my sketchbook, sketch. Look back through the binocular, sketch. And with birds, especially if they're flying over, and here's a study of a grackle. And with ink and watercolor and marker, I caught the pose. Grackle. Of course, it's a male grackle showing off, and they're really good they're such characters. They're really good for doing animal studies. And this was with India ink. And it may look really all black, but it's not. I got a nice bloom here. And these are the kind of things in my water media class that I'm teaching right now on Mondays that I go over. This too. This was a Portuguese man of war that washed ashore, and I had some paper that was this is Fabriano Rosa Pina. It's a gray, beautiful paper that I like to print on. But sometimes you might want to work on a toned paper that's already a color. So you can see this is white paper, that's a gray paper. And then I like to do watercolor and then do just a touch of pen and ink on top. That's just how I like to work. I use color pencil too, but this is more over time what I've evolved to do. And you can see also that I incorporated a little bit of cross-hatching and a little bit of hatching to define that shadow. Okay, and I also wanted to point out, look at my line, how I don't do like a hard contour line all the way around. I interrupt the line a little bit, and that just gives kind of a more of a looseness to the sketch, I think. Okay. I wanted to show you just a few others. It's a stinky thing to do, but dead fish are also a good subject matter, and sadly, with the Winter Storm Uri, we certainly had an abundance of those on the Texas coast. There was a massive fish kill in Texas Um, so it was hard on people and hard on wildlife. But this was a giant black drum. This fish is 4 feet long. If you're going to sketch fish on the beach, get downwind. Don't be downwind of it. Move around so that you're not, you're not. Well, you'll figure it out because you'll be uncomfortable because it'll smell horrible. So when you're well, the wash is the color. Um, I did a quick pencil sketch. The thing is, if I paint over my lines, it'll cover them up. So and this was a catfish. Watch out for clamps. I got a clamp indent here that I'm not happy about, and there's nothing I can do about it. I can't get rid of it. I can mat this, but it's going to come close to that tail. So rubber banding is a good idea because the wind is fierce at the beach. Your stuff will fly. You got to tape it or rubber band it or something. Also, a little bit of gouache. That's white gouache, which has Chinese white in or chalk or Chinese white in it, is a good thing to have if you're going to work with watercolor. But that was a good question, Randy. The order that you do things in. This was a more desiccated fish. So, it's not always pretty things that I draw and paint. And, there's animals, do die, and but that can be an interesting opportunity for observation. But that's not for everyone. Okay, and you can take those sketches and incorporate them into other things. Like this is a mixed media piece that I have. Mixed media meaning more than one art form. In fact, it even has actual animal parts in the work of art, shark's teeth. But this was a watercolor. I did the sketch of a fish head with a little bit of colored pencil. And then that I added color here, and that was a sketch of the bone, the backbone here, a lino cut, so mixed media. So I just wanted to show a little bit from traveling. These are sacred deer from Nara in Japan, and I was real happy with how that sketch turned out. Japanese friends of mine really liked the little Bambi-like deer here, that I caught the sweetness of the baby deer. And I did. I caught that. And notice, too, how, like, this deer kind of looks like it's on top of that deer. That's fine. I mean, I wasn't fixated on it being absolute accurate, showing that one deer behind the other. Later in my hotel room, I added the vermilion ink. Okay, so some things, if you're traveling, you'll want to do later. Okay, let's look at one from Mexico. So this was on the beach in Crucecita, the west coast of Mexico, and this man was carrying an iguana named Pepito. Well, by that point, Pepito was 3 feet long, so he was no longer Pepito, and he was charging people to take photos of the iguana. He actually, can you believe this, he charged me to draw Pepito. So I drew Pepito, and he was an iguana with some attitude, as you can see. He was like, oh, please. But just adding a little bit of circles here and there, I gave a sense for the scales, that he's a scaly animal. And this is collaged out. I carefully used an X-Acto knife later to cut this out when I got back to San Antonio and I was in my studio. And then I wanted to work with a bright palette reflective of Mexico, so I used gouache, which is a wonderful paint that gives us a very solid matte look to the surface. In fact, that's what I went over Monday night with my other class, gouache. But beautiful complementary effect between the magenta and the green. And kind of jumping off of what Randy said earlier, I can tell I did these circles before I painted the gouache, and notice how they're kind of muted, but that worked out. It just gave a mid-range value for those scales, and then later I went back over with a pit pen and did darker brown just to add some more emphasis to the scales. Okay, so if you can capture the animal's character, personality, and this is going to be true next week of people too, then you've accomplished something. And I did accomplish that in this sketch. Okay, it's hard to do. So as far as references, I kind of talked to Joe about that earlier. I recommend I work from life. Work from, in terms of, let me just show working from life, what that means. Here, where did I put those? So collecting items like this little mole crab on the beach, these kinds of specimens are interesting to have for later observation, but this was already dead. You want to be careful about hermit crabs being stuck in shells if you collect shells at the beach. Feathers that you can observe, to draw from. Just freeze them because they have mites. The freezing them will kill the mites. Okay? I just put them in an envelope, labeled. Okay. Like I said, the cicadas, the shells those are really useful. And while our other dried bugs, I have this giant rhinoceros beetle that was in the beds in my front yard, so I kept it, but dry it, and they smell, while they're drying, and certainly the cicada. So that's just the shell. That's not the actual bug. Okay. They do tend to fall apart, especially legs and antenna over time. And even if you have access to, if you have skulls, fine skulls are really good for study, okay, in terms of understanding the body of the animal. And they're just beautiful objects if you think of George O'Keeffe's paintings and whatnot. This, I'm not sure what this is. It might be like a skunk. Possibly. I used to work at a nature center in Houston, so that's how I acquired these. But I love animals, so I would never kill an animal just to observe it. And then books like this, I would recommend this book. You have to order it online. It's not easy to find. Edvard Muybridge's turn of the century photographs of animals in motion, and he also has one for people. So these are these are really old, from like 19 teens, but he was famous for his proving that a horse's legs leave the ground. That was a famous bet between a governor of California and a senator, and the governor won. Muybridge proved it, that all the hooves of a horse leave the ground. So this was really laying the groundwork for movies. This was before the time of movies. Okay, but these books are it's an excellent reference, especially if you are interested in doing animations. Okay. It's Edvard Muybridge. There's a movie about him too. He had quite an eventful life. I think he may have committed murder. Uh, so, all right. So let's get busy here. So, I have a. Oh, and let me just say before I continue. I was this is the Sarah the River Reach magazine. Like, they have good photographs, but the thing is, someone has copyright to this. So it's better if you're going to work from photos that you work from your own photos. What I was telling Joe earlier is that if you go to Flickr, there's a Creative Commons area, CC, and those are photographs that are royalty free, and you can work from them. And if you sell your work, you won't get in trouble. The problem is when you sell the work. That's how Shepard Fairey got into a heap of trouble over his Obama poster Hope, because the photographer ended up getting millions of dollars suing Shepard Fairey over that photo. Which, was small beans for Shepard Fairey. He's multi-millionaire at this point. Okay, so I have a phenomena happening on my porch that I'm very excited about. I have a baby butterfly. I got some butterfly weed, and like magic, it works. All of a sudden, all these lovely little monarch butterfly caterpillars started appearing. So here's that little one. And it was only, like that big when I took that photo, or because my iPhone is really good at getting up close-up shots. So when you're studying an animal, it's a good idea to get different views of the animal that you can work from, just so you expand your understanding of it. But I was really happy with this photo of it curling around that blossom, and really getting a feeling for its antenna and the colors, and also just the whole composition I was very happy with. So I'm going to work from this and show you different techniques for depicting that little caterpillar. And I'll go ahead and keep that like this. So I'm going to start off with using my pencil. So you can see me doing like a gestural sketch. And I think I'll do one in one area, and then I'll move. I want to make sure I get this one done that I have here, and maybe with one I'll use color pencil, and one I'll use with marker. Okay, so I just have, this is like an H pencil, and I just want to, in fact, maybe I'll work on mixed media paper for this. So it helps to plan ahead a little bit about well, I'll go ahead and use both. I'll use, so you can see both types of papers. So loose, like gestural sketch. And if I'm working from life, I need to work quickly. So you won't have time to just do pencil unless you just want it to be a pencil sketch. You'll have to work directly in pen. I did those deer in pen, and if that makes you nervous, it's just practice. You just have to keep practicing until you improve your accuracy. Practice, practice, practice. Now I'm curving these lines for that blossom. I'm keeping it light. It depends on the media that I'm going to be using, and we talked a little bit about that. I mean, if I'm just using pen and ink, I wouldn't do a gestural. I wouldn't work with pencil. I would just start right away with pen. Okay. If I'm going to add water media, then I got to think about that a little bit more. Uh-huh. Yeah, I have it. I mean, yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I could move this over this way a little. I don't know. Yeah, there we go. You're welcome. So, well, calendars, are copyrighted, but building up some sources as reference, like calendar photos. So when if you buy a calendar to hang on your wall, think about that each year. That get a calendar that after the year's done, you can save the images as references because they're big, they're colorful, and they're professionally done photographs. So calendars are a good source for reference photos. And like right now, I'm adding the plants around the caterpillars, so getting a loose sense for the environment that the animal is in. That may not be relevant to a pet, like maybe with a bed if they're laying in their bed or they have a toy nearby. But with a wild animal like this, it's getting a feeling for it being on the butterfly weed. Um, I mean, I consider myself an amateur naturalist, and Darwin kept copious notes and sketches, and there was an artist on the Beagle who was assisting with sketching the fauna and flora. So before photography, um, that's how scientists study. One of my favorite artists, who's become known more recently, is Sibylla Merian, an incredible artist. The National Museum of Women in the Arts has her work, but she was Dutch in the early 1600s, and she did incredible plant animal drawings in Indonesia. And women did not travel at that point in time, and she even took her daughter, you know, no husband, and had a very successful business as a illustrator. So here, I'll put that in the chat so you all can look her up, because she's just, I so admire her. Let me make sure I'm spelling this right. I may not have that. Sibylla. Here, let me. Oops. All right, now I'm going to start to do the fun part, the stripes. And I am curving these stripes to the caterpillar's body. Now, it's for what you all are doing, you don't have to get too caught up in accuracy. The Nature Center I worked at in Houston, I collaborated with scientists from all the way from the Houston Museum of Natural History and Science to Exxon geologists, and I had to be extremely accurate in my drawings. But you don't have to worry about getting the species exactly right with what you're doing. All right, so I've got the basic form of my my animal. Now I'm going to go in and all right, so this one I think I'll go ahead and I'll just use colored pencil with this. So I can go in with pen. I can go in with just colored pencil. If you don't have colored pencil, I'll show you the set that I like. Prismacolor's excellent. This is Derwent. They're very soft. Prismacolor makes called Very Thin, VERITHIN. That's a very hard pencil, so it's the opposite of these. Faber-Castell makes an oil-based color pencil, Polychromos. That's really interesting. I think I'll keep this just in pencil and do shading with pencil, and I'm just going to add a touch of color, okay? Now, I think I'm using a pretty hard pencil right now, so I'm going to switch to a less hard pencil. And we're going to be using these when we do landscape, your sketch and wash pencils. Those are a water-soluble pencil. Okay, well, this is a very dark pencil. It's an 8B. So this is a 8B pencil, so it's going to be really dark. It's a good idea when you're working to have a sharpener that has a container. Oops. Empty it so that it sharpens well. Generals makes a decent one. Or have a knife nearby. The lead broke off on that. Alright, well that's not wanting to cooperate, so I'm going to use my black color pencil. Okay. If you're working with graphite, you might want to protect your sketch by just putting some kind of scrap paper underneath your hand so that you don't smear. So you can see how I'm putting that underneath my hand. That helps keep me from smearing. Okay, so now I'm going into my... I'm sorry, what was that, Randy? Yes, it's a piece of paper, so I don't smear, because you will smear pencil, and I'm working left to right, so that takes in account that I'm going to be moving that direction through the sketch. So I'm less likely to smear. If I start over here, I'm going to be moving over my sketch as I draw. Yeah. Well, I'm kind of... At one point I was ambidextrous, because I was caused my mother lots of grief as a teenager, breaking arms. So I had to learn to draw with my left arm, which I became adept at it. I should have kept it up. I didn't, because I switched to just the black color pencil. And you can see I've been using it a lot. It's a little thing. When you sharpen your pencils, be sure to sharpen them at the end so that you can keep the color, the name of the color. The color is up near the top of the pencil. And at the art supply stores, you can buy an extender to put onto the end of the pencil so that you can keep using it. So those extenders are useful and save money. Now I'm going to just keep working in pencil for this sketch, and I'm just going to add a little bit of color. I'm going to make most of my lines, I can do my shading in pencil, and then just add a little bit of color. But if you're a color maven and you want to have lots of color, then you can be switching. You can be switching into different color pencils. Just anytime you're switching brushes or switching pencils, that takes time, and those are decisions. And I just really want to focus more on observation. This is kind of what I'm doing is kind of based on a medieval practice of painting called Griselle. Grisaille. Or I'll put it in the. And it's the idea of it is that you set up your value range in gray, and then you do the color on top. So a lot of medieval painting was done that way. So just shading with see, I'm adding continuous tone, just using the side of my pencil, and then I'll put the color pencil on top. So it's not as vibrant as if I were shading with green using the local color. But you're really, I feel like I'm trying to catch an impression of the animal and its environment. I'm not trying to copy nature, because good luck with that. And with a pencil sketch, I like to just let it kind of dissipate. A way to focus attention onto an area is where you have the most shading, the most detail. That's where the viewer's eye is going to go. So you're in control of that. You're the artist. You decide where you want people to look. So if I put too much detail on the leaves, they're going to look at the leaves, and I don't mind them looking at the leaves a little bit, but I really just want them to focus on the caterpillar. So just by changing pressure, I can create continuous tone with one pencil. I went outside the other day, and the caterpillar was laying on a leaf. I swear it was taking a nap. It was taking a little caterpillar siesta. It was the cutest thing. I was like, caterpillars take naps. Who knew? And you can even have just line, no shading on the edge of the drawing. Just have the drawing kind of disappear into just line. If you, pop artist Jim Dine is someone I've always really admired, and he's known for his 1960s drawings and paintings of tools and like a bathrobe and things like that. You know, and that's the pop artists did that. They focused on everyday life and consumer items, but his drawings of plants are remarkable. And he often in his drawings will do that. Just have the drawing just dissipate into pure line. Okay, so I've got the basic shading of the caterpillar and the surrounding plants. So now I'm going to add some color to my sketch. Just a little bit of delicate color. And color pencil can smear too, so I would keep using that piece of paper to protect your hand. Let's see if I have a warm yellow. So I'm switching to acid yellow. Okay, that's good for this. Color is going to grab the viewer's eye. So another way to make attention to your drawing is to use spot color. Color only in the places where you want the viewer to look. But if you see how I've already made tone shading with that black pencil, and then I just put the color right on top. Okay? So instead of using another red, a darker red, I just use the graphite itself to make the change in value. The graphite underpins the color pencil. And then you're not having to use so many different pencils and switch between pencils, and it just makes everything less complicated, which is, in my view, a good thing. Get a little green into the composition. And then I'm just going to have the color fade off, just like my value gradation is doing. These soft colored pencils are good for creating this kind of continuous tone. They're good for shading. The hard ones, the very thins, are good for detail, line work, and hatching, cross-hatching. You can do that with a color pencil too. Okay, I want to add just a darker green. More of a viridian. But again, it's really the graphite that set up my value range. Well, it was the black pencil. The color is just going right on top. Yes, so Pigma pens do come in colors. Yes, and I'm going to show markers next before the class is done today. Okay, I'm going to just add a little bit more emphasis on my antennas. And at the end of a drawing, this is when I make the decision about where do I need to add emphasis, where is the viewer's eye going. And notice I left the white of the paper to make the white of the caterpillar. And I think I want a little bit of green here. I didn't do a line all the way around the caterpillar. And so this is an important point, that the way we see the world is through changes in value, changes in color. Line is not common in nature. There's not a contour line around everything. If you're working just in pen and ink, then you've got to work with line, and I love line. But and this is more of a painterly approach, like to show this edge, instead of drawing the line, I'm going to add some value. And if you look in the photo, the way we see the difference between the caterpillar and the leaf behind it is change in color. The leaf is darker, and change in value and change in color. Okay? So I'm just going to shade back here because I'm now noticing I need to bring out that wonderful curve of the caterpillar more. The only other way I could do it would be to use line. So I've made a decision not to use line. I'm going to use value. So those are the kinds of things in your toolkit that you make decisions about. If I'm working strictly in pen and ink, I would use line. It depends on my technique that I want to use. So this approach is good for sustained. If I'm working from a photo or a very still object, this is not a good approach for a moving animal. That you would want to use pen and ink and gestural line. And you might not have any shading or very limited. Okay, so I think I have my caterpillar depicted pretty accurately and thoroughly in terms of color. Squint, and that helps you see value and contrast better. It blocks color so that you can see contrast and you can see more about value. I think I'll just add a little bit more on that flower. Okay. Ta-da! Caterpillar. Okay, so now I'm going to switch to some mixed media paper. This is drawing paper, and this is fine for working with pencil. I can do light washes on drawing paper, but if you're going to do if you're going to be using a lot of water frequently, then I would recommend you switched to a mixed media kind of paper like this. Okay. So now I'm going to look at the version of the butterfly when it was younger butterfly from further away. So this version of the butterfly. Let's see. Yeah, like that. Okay. And for this one, I'm going to go ahead and work. I'm going to go ahead and use the Tombow and then add some water so that you can see what that does. So I'm going to work in black and white, and if we have time, I'll add a little color to it. Okay, so I'm going to start with, so I think for this I'm going to combine pens, and you need to think about that. When you start to introduce water into the equation and you're working with pen and ink. So if I don't want the lines to dissolve, then I need to work with a waterproof pen, like the Pitt pen. So I'm going to start with the Pitt pen, but then I'm going to do some washes using the Tombow in conjunction with the Pitt pen. Okay. So I'm going to work quickly. First, I'm going to, and this is how I get around not using a pencil. I'm going to do just a quick, like, very loose kind of gestural line that is not like a hard contour line. It's just very loose because I can't erase this. This is permanent now. So I'm not going to commit to the line yet. Okay, I like to look at it that way. I'm not yet committed to that line. When I commit to it, I'll make it darker. When I know my composition is going to be effective and I'm not going off the page in some unwanted way, or I don't have the proportions right on an object. These blossoms are very polygonal, and that's something about drawing from nature is you learn about the animal, the plant as you work. Changing scale, like with these flowers, that can be good. And it's not working in pen and ink unless it's a really wet pen. It's probably not going to smear. I mean, they've really got the science down on these so that they dry quickly. I mean, it can smear. I have had markers smear, so you can how I had my piece of paper underneath. You can also build a bridge to put your hand on, just with a 1x4 piece of wood. You can use that. We do that in lithography. But, that's another thing that you have to carry around with you. When you're traveling, that's maybe not feasible. Uh-huh. I can switch I can switch to the pit pen. Uh to the Pigma pen, but I don't there's not really much of a difference. Pigma pens are good for, I find they're most useful for fine line, because they have so many wonderful varieties of diameters for their pens. Pigma doesn't have as much variety. This is just a medium, our pit pen is just a medium pit pen. They have medium, fine, and large. That's it. Whereas your Pigmas have 001, 005, because they're made for the manga industry. That's why Japan has all these great pens. It's for the comic book artist of Japan. So when I teach in Japan, my students a lot of them can't wait to go to the art supply stores to get their cool pens to take home to the States. Oh, great. Yeah, I know. I love that too. Um I mean, sometimes it's just, you know, get getting some supplies abroad can be fun. And I do a blend where I bring some uh and I buy some. Usually I end up having to buy paper because I just run through all my paper. Yeah, sometimes things that I've bought that they didn't used to sell, especially a lot of these Asian, like the brush pens, where you can put the ink or water in. Now those are so popular, and they were non-existent when I first got them. You couldn't get them here at the art supply stores. Okay, so there's like a real quick little sketch for me to start with, and it's in my pit pen, so it's if I add water on top, it won't do anything. It won't smear. Okay. All right. So now I'm gonna go in with the Tombow marker and just start to add some shading and more details that I'm gonna end up making a wash with. And I think well, that's okay. I better do it now because once I add the water, I won't be able to. So I'm gonna go in with my pit pen and get some of this areas darker. I'm committing to the line now. So I'm happy with the placement of everything, and It is. Hopefully it'll work. I'm hoping it'll work out. Yeah, I actually logged on like an hour before class, but then it Google Classroom kicked me off. Yeah. So by the so I'm not recording in Google Classroom. I'm actually recording in Photo Booth, and then I'll take it in. I'll download it as QuickTime. So I'm hoping that this will be my fail-safe for when Google Classroom does things like this. Yes, it's free. Yeah, Zoom is not free. The college district I work for, I use Zoom with that. So that's been an interesting challenge for me to go between two learning management systems. Yeah, sometimes initially, first initially I got a little confused. I was like, no, that's Zoom. That's not this one. But I mean, they're both very simple overall and user friendly. I think Zoom's a little bit more so, mainly because of the recording thing. And yeah, I understand why they're using Google. You know, I mean, free is good, and it's free. I do like how it links to the other aspects of Google, like the email system and the hard drive, which Zoom does not do. So, there's that side to it. So there I've got more of the that sketch laid out, and I was thinking this morning I want to go ahead and get a set of color Tombow pens. Right now I just have like yellow and turquoise and black and gray, but I do have a yellow which will be useful this morning on that caterpillar. Okay, how we doing? All right, need to. So I'm gonna just go in now with my calligraphic end, and I'm gonna just add, moving it side to side like I would shade with a pencil, and just add some color like this. And I don't have to do it all the way because I'm gonna add water. I know I'm gonna add water to this. And when I do that, it's gonna. So I'm just looking at kind of the darker areas, like where the darker areas around the caterpillar to bring it out, and also the veins of the leaf. Okay, so and it can dry. It'll dry quickly. And I know I want to pull those flowers out more, so I'm going to put some value in there so that those are darker recessed areas. And this is a faster way to work than using shading continuous tone with pencil. Yes, this is Tombow. And you have to kind of let go of uh of it being perfect and just let it be what it's going to be and let it dry. And then after it's dry, you can work back into the sketch. You could add a little spot color with some other markers, like that would be nice for those red blossoms. Okay, and I'm going to use this um, pen. Another pen that I could have used is this one that has the ink in the handle. So you can buy these at your art supply stores or order them. This one has water. These are harder to find. Herwix locally has a lot of good selections of these. Pentel is now making these for the American market. Okay, so and I have water in this already, and you just squeeze it, and then it'll squeeze out a drop of water on here, and then I just can move it around. And it makes a wash. I also could have used the Sketch and Wash pencil that we're going to use with landscape, if you prefer more of a pencil look. And it'll dry lighter than what you see, so keep that in mind too. But you can see it's dissolving. But my pen work with the Pitt pen is not dissolving. And this paper is accepting it really well, this mixed media paper. You could also use watercolor paper that's cold press if you like a texture. Mixed media paper is hot press and very smooth. So I like both. And Tombow comes in all different colors, so you can do the same with the other colors. I really want to add some emphasis for my caterpillar. And I like kind of the blooms you get. They're called blooms. Some watercolorists don't like them, but I do. And like I said, the Tombow makes a cool black. That other pen I just showed that has India ink in the handle, or I'm not sure if it's India ink or Sumi ink, but that is a warmer color of black than this. But I like both. So it's kind of a cross between watercolor and sketching, and I like that I maintain like my sketch lines, but it adds value with wash. And you got to be careful not to overwork it. Knowing when to stop is one of the hardest things in art, but that can make or break a work of art. Knowing when to stop, when enough is enough. If you overwork something, it just kills it. Takes away the freshness, the spontaneity. And I like how I can just do like this off to the side, just let it dissipate. Okay. And then I can use, this is my yellow Tombow. I'll add a little spot color here and there for my caterpillar, and maybe just a little for the plant. I have. I mean, you are at the mercy of whatever markers you have in terms of color. You can try to layer the color to get, oh, here, let me show you, Tom, the Prismacolors. Prismacolors are permanent, but these also are a really good tin, the Prismacolors. Okay, so I'm going to add a little. Now, see, the red I know is going to be too intense, so I'm going to go in with this orange first on the blossoms. Just adding a little bit. In fact, I think that's going to be enough. Just a little bit of color. If I had a tombow that was reddish, I would use it, but I don't. Oh, thank you, Randy. Okay. I know. Well, I'm getting into it. That's what happens when you are drawing and in the moment. Now remember, just to add spot color just here and there. All right, let's talk a little bit about next week and wrap it up. Next week is people. So next week you need to have like some reference to work with relative to people. It can be a photograph, or if someone is sitting nearby that you could sketch in class live, you could do that. But probably a photo is more what you're going to want to work from. And for this class, it's really about getting a sense of motion. So I'd recommend that you get like some kind of like musicians playing or children, doing something, running, skipping, jumping, something along those lines. A girl in a swing, or somebody playing sports. So just to show the two different methods side by side, working with pencil and working with pen and ink. Okay, so you see both that we did today. Thank you. So both capture the animal, but in very different ways. So that's it for our class today. Whew, looks like I'm in the dark here. And I hope you all have a great week. Get outside, go to a park, go somewhere, walk on the beach, and observe some animals. And I look forward to seeing what you submit to me. And please keep submitting in the stream so that everybody in the class can see what we're doing. And I'll hopefully this recorded and I can get that video up soon. All right, and let me see if I had anybody else come on board. No, okay. You all have a great week. And yes, happy July 4th. Bye-bye.